Ferrari just found a loophole so obvious, Mercedes may never forget missing it. The 2026 rules said the active wing had to move within 400 milliseconds, but they never said the wing had to stay upright. So Ferrari built the Macarena wing, a legal rear wing that rotates roughly 270 degrees, flips almost upside down on the straights, and attacks the exact place Mercedes had been dominating all season. Straight line speed, but that was only the first shock. Ferrari also helped force a rule change on Mercedes' engine measurement. Then it helped close the qualifying energy trick Mercedes and Red Bull had been using. 3 loopholes, 3 hits, 1 target, Mercedes' entire advantage. And when Hamilton won in Barcelona by 19.5 seconds, the proof was impossible to ignore. Ferrari did not just expose a loophole in the rules. Ferrari exposed that Mercedes had missed the most dangerous question in the rulebook. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why this loophole landed so hard, you have to understand what everyone thought the 2026 rules were supposed to do. They were supposed to reset Formula One. Not gently, completely. The old drag reduction system was gone. The old way of thinking about straight line speed was gone. The cars had active aerodynamics now, with wings that changed position depending on whether the car was on a straight or in a corner. The power units were different. The electrical side mattered more. The cars were lighter, narrower, and more sensitive. Every team had to rebuild its concept from the ground up. And whenever Formula One starts again like that, the real race is not only on the track. It is in the wording. Because the fastest team is often not the team that works hardest. Every team works hard. The fastest team is the one that reads the rules differently, finds a sentence everyone else ignored, and turns a small interpretation into lap time. At first, everyone thought Mercedes had done exactly that. The W17 looked like the smartest answer to the new era. It was fast in a way that felt deeply connected. It could leave corners cleanly. It could deploy electrical energy down the straights. It had the straight line efficiency that made rivals feel trapped before they even reached the braking zone. That is why Mercedes looked so comfortable early in the season. They were not just winning races. They were winning the moments that decide races. A corner exit, a straight, a final burst before braking. That is where Ferrari had been suffering. The Ferrari had life through the corners. Hamilton and Leclerc could feel that the car had something underneath it. It could grip. It could rotate. It could stay alive through technical sections. But when the road opened, Mercedes had the escape route. That is the worst kind of weakness for a driver, because it makes your best work feel wasted. You fight through the corner. You position the car. You reach the throttle. You think the gap is close enough to attack. Then the Mercedes pulls away, and the opportunity dies before it is even born. Ferrari knew it could not solve that problem with a normal upgrade. A little more downforce would not be enough. A slightly cleaner setup would not be enough. They needed something aimed directly at the one area where Mercedes felt safest. Straight line speed. That is where the Macarena wing changed the entire conversation. Most teams read the active aero rules in the obvious way. On the straight, open the wing. In the corner, close the wing. Reduce drag, then restore downforce. Simple, logical, safe. Ferrari read the same rule and asked a much more dangerous question. If the wing is allowed to move, how far can it move? That is the question that exposed the loophole. The regulation controlled the transition time. It said the movement between the two aerodynamic modes had to happen quickly, within 400 milliseconds, but did not say the wing had to remain upright in its open position. That missing instruction gave Ferrari a door, and Ferrari walked straight through it. Instead of building a wing that simply opened like everyone expected, Ferrari created a rear wing that could rotate roughly 270 degrees. On the straight, it effectively flipped almost upside down. That meant it was not just reducing drag. It was changing how the air pushed against the car in a completely different way. Think of it like sticking your hand out of a car window. If your palm faces the wind, the air pushes hard against it. If you tilt your hand, the force changes. If you flip it, the air behaves differently again. Ferrari took that simple idea and turned it into one of the boldest interpretations of the new rules. And this is why Mercedes could not laugh it off. The concept attacked the exact place where the W17 had been hurting Ferrari. If the Macarena wing could give Ferrari even a meaningful part of the estimated straight line gain, then Mercedes' biggest weapon would no longer be guaranteed. The straight would no longer belong automatically to the silver car. That is the kind of change that affects everything. It affects qualifying because straight-line efficiency can decide whether a car finishes a flying lap with enough speed. It affects overtaking because the attacking driver needs to stay close before the braking zone. It affects strategy because a car that can defend on the straights can choose different race plans. And it affects psychology because once a driver believes a Mercedes can be caught, the entire battle changes. But Ferrari's first attempt was not perfect. And that makes the story even more interesting. When Ferrari first ran the wing in China, the car did not behave cleanly. A high-speed balance issue caused a spin. The team withdrew the wing before sprint qualifying. Vasseur admitted Ferrari did not yet know enough about the effects it was having on the car. That could have been the end of it. A strange idea. Too unstable. Too risky. Too hard to control. But Ferrari saw enough to keep going. That is what should have worried Mercedes. Because a failed first version does not mean a concept is wrong. Sometimes it means the concept is powerful, but not yet understood. The danger is not the first test. The danger is what happens when the team learns how to control it. Ferrari spent weeks refining the idea. They brought evolved versions. They tested. They studied the balance. They worked on making the wing less of a shock to the car and more of a tool the drivers could trust. Then came the closed running at Monza. 200 kilometers of data. Hamilton and Leclerc testing the revised concept. And suddenly the tone changed. The results were strong enough for Ferrari to move the race debut forward. That was the real signal. Teams do not accelerate a risky concept unless the data gives them confidence. Ferrari had gone from curiosity to concern to commitment. Then Vasseur made the key decision. The Macarena wing would stay on the car. That sentence was bigger than it sounded, because once Ferrari committed to it, the loophole stopped being a theory. It became a development path, a legal path, a path that other teams could study, copy, and evolve. And that is the part Mercedes had to fear most. In a new regulation era, the team that defines the correct direction can control years of development. If everyone else follows your idea, you stay ahead because you started earlier. But if a rival finds a better interpretation, you can suddenly be forced to chase a concept you did not choose. Ferrari was trying to make Mercedes chase. That is the reversal. At the start of season, Ferrari was the team chasing Mercedes on the straights. After the Macarena wing became real, Mercedes had to ask whether Ferrari had found the more important long-term answer to active aerodynamics. That is a terrifying question for any dominant team, because it does not only affect the next race. It affects every upgrade plan, every simulation, every aerodynamic choice, every resource decision. Do you keep developing your current concept, or do you start studying Ferrari's idea? Do you trust the path that made you fast early, or do you admit a rival may have found a bigger loophole? There is no painless answer. If Mercedes ignores the wing and Ferrari keeps improving it, the gap can close. If Mercedes tries to copy it, they may spend months learning what Ferrari already knows. If Mercedes challenges it, they risk looking like a team trying to protest something already approved. And if more rivals start copying it, the entire grid may shift toward Ferrari's interpretation. That is why the governing body's position mattered so much. Ferrari had submitted the design. It had been cleared as legal. That left rivals with very little room. They could question the spirit of the rule. They could say the active aero system was never meant to rotate like that. They could argue the concept looked extreme. But the written rule had created the opening. And in Formula One, written openings are everything. That is the brutal lesson Ferrari delivered. You do not always need to break a rule. Sometimes you only need to notice what the rule forgot to say. That is what left Mercedes exposed. Not because Mercedes suddenly became slow. Not because Ferrari instantly became the fastest car everywhere. But because the aura of Mercedes having the smartest interpretation was damaged. The W17 was still fast. But Ferrari had found something Mercedes had not. And once that happens, confidence changes. Inside Mercedes, the question becomes uncomfortable. If Ferrari found this loophole, what else did we miss? If Ferrari can legally rotate a rear wing almost upside down, how much more performance is hidden in the active aero wording? If a straight line advantage starts shrinking, does our whole race model become weaker? Those are the kinds of questions that do not disappear after one meeting. They grow, because the Macarena wing was not Ferrari's only attack. It was the visible one, the one everyone could see, name, and debate. But underneath it, Ferrari was also attacking Mercedes through the regulations themselves. And that is where the story becomes much bigger than one clever piece of carbon fiber. Ferrari had discovered that 2026 could be fought in 3 places at once. On the car, in the rulebook, and in the minds of rivals. The wing attacked the car. The regulatory pressure attacked Mercedes' hidden advantages. And Hamilton's eventual win attacked the belief that Mercedes still had total control. That is why this first block matters so much. Because the loophole was not just a technical discovery. It was the first sign that Ferrari had stopped reacting to Mercedes and started shaping the fight itself. They were no longer only asking, how do we catch the W17? They were asking, how do we change the battlefield so the W17 loses its safest weapons? And once Ferrari asked that question, the entire season began to feel different. The next layer is where Ferrari's loophole stops being a clever idea and becomes a direct attack on Mercedes' entire 2026 advantage. Because the Macarena wing was only the first door Ferrari opened. The second door was even more uncomfortable for Mercedes. Power unit interpretation. Before the season truly settled, Ferrari and other manufacturers raised concerns about the way Mercedes' engine advantage was being measured. The issue was not that Mercedes had been caught cheating. That is important. The concern was much more subtle, and in Formula One, subtle can be more dangerous than obvious. The rules limited the compression ratio of the engine, but the measurement was taken under cold conditions. Ferrari believed that was not enough, because racing engines do not live in cold conditions. They live in heat, extreme heat. They live under pressure, vibration, and constant stress. Parts expand, clearances change. The way an engine behaves when it is cold is not always the way it behaves when it is being pushed on a Grand Prix Sunday. So Ferrari pushed the question, if the limit matters, why only measure it cold? That question created another problem for Mercedes. Because rivals believed the Mercedes power unit may have been gaining performance once it reached racing temperature. Not outside the rules as written, but inside a gray area that existed because the rule did not measure the engine in the condition that mattered most. That is the kind of advantage Formula One teams dream of. A legal advantage, an invisible advantage, an advantage that lives not in a dramatic new part, but in the difference between how the rule is checked and how the car actually races.